20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. This is the treasury of illustrated classics. Chapter 1, The Monster at Sea. It was in the year 1866 that the monster was first seen. Sailors from every country who dared to challenge the high seas trembled when night fell over the great oceans. The stories that the sailors told were different from ship to ship, but on one point they all agreed. The monster was huge, gigantic. The monster was said to be 200 feet long, and there were some old seamen who swore it was a mile long and 3 miles wide. On black, moonless nights, sailors would spot a strange glow in the distance. It lit up the water. The men would lie awake at night, all night, shaking in their bunks. As word of the monster spread everywhere, scientists from all over the world began to wonder what it was that roamed the dark oceans. What was this creature? People everywhere wanted to know. A year had passed since the first sighting of this mysterious monster. Everyone expected the scientists to solve this problem as soon as possible. The governments of many countries were becoming very worried as fear of the monster grew. The great men of science met together, arguing far into many nights, but they could not find no answer. Out at sea, the monster still prowled the cold ocean depths. One chilly evening at sea, a very fast and powerful steamer, the Scotia, was sailing the gray waters of the North Atlantic. All of a sudden, there was a terrible jolt. On board the Scotia, it had been peaceful. It was dusk and nearly time for dinner. Passengers were coming to eat in the great saloon. Up on deck, the sailors on the evening watch had taken their posts. Suddenly, the dreaded lights appeared on the darkening sea. The sailors froze and looked at one another in terror. "It's the monster! Run and ward the captain!" Their frightened voices trembled. But just as quickly as they came, the lights vanished. The crewmen wiped their sweaty faces and relaxed. Then it happened. The Scotia was struck with the force. Panic broke out in the saloon. Tables, dishes, and people were thrown to the floor. Captain Anderson rushed about, trying to calm the frightened guests, when a sailor from the engine room ran in. "We're sinking!" he cried. His face was white with horror. People began to rush in all directions. The slower ones were knocked to the floor. The ship was in total confusion. The captain climbed onto a table and tried to get the attention of the running crowd. "Stop it, all of you," he commanded in a firm voice. Slowly the passengers began to quiet down, and at least there was order on board the Scotia. The captain led the crew below deck to see how bad the damage was. What they found frightened even the brave Captain Anderson. Icy seawater was gushing in and quickly flooding the forward hold. The leak was very bad. A brave sailor dove under the ship to find out the size of the leak. When he was at last pulled back on deck, he had alarming news. "There is a hole in the hull, at least 7 feet in diameter," he reported as he stood dripping and shivering in front of the captain. There was no doubt the Scotia was in terrible danger. If the water that was pouring in from the hole reached the engine room, the ship would go straight to the bottom of the cold Atlantic. The Scotia had no choice but to make her way over 300 miles back to port. After 3 days, the injured ship finally docked safely in England. Experts from all over came to look at the hole in the Scotia to try to figure out what could have made it. They were all shocked by what they saw. The hole in the ship was cut so neatly that it looked as though it had been done by some kind of razor-sharp cutting machine, and it was made through several inches of solid iron. Everyone was asking the same question. What sort of creature could have made that hole? No one knew the answer, but one thing was clear. No ship was safe at sea. It was at this time that I came into the story. The creature had become the terror of the seas, and I was determined to hunt it down. My name is Professor Pierre Aronnax. The French government sent me to see what could be done about this monster. I came to New York with my faithful servant, Conseil. Soon I met the bold and famous Captain Farragut. It was on his ship that we were going to sail in our search for the monster. He would be in charge of the sailing, and I would be in charge of the searching. Together we would make the creature run for its life. Our ship was called the Abraham Lincoln. It was one of the fastest ships ever built. The day came for us to leave on our great search. Crowds had gathered on the docks to see us off. There were many flags waving and brightly colored streamers floating on the soft breeze. A band played, and we were even given a 21-gun salute. I was sorry to have to leave, but it was time to cast off. We headed out to sea while thousands of people cheered. Conseil and I stood on the deck watching the shore become smaller and smaller in the distance. He looked a bit homesick, and I wanted to cheer him up. "There's nothing to be frightened of, my boy," I promised him. "I have a pretty good idea just what we're looking for." "You do?" asked Conseil, quite surprised. "Yes, I think it is a very large type of whale, called a narwhal," I whispered. "This whale has a long, sharp horn and lives in the deepest parts of the ocean." The ships going by had most likely disturbed it and made it angry. "Just think what a discovery like this will mean to science," I concluded happily. Conseil looked better. "Only a whale?" He laughed. We stood looking at the dancing waves. If only we had known then what was to happen. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, please click like and subscribe.